I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Eric Ogilvy and Darren Mercer. How are you guys?
Hey, Eric, good morning.
All right. Perfect. This session promises to be very interactive with the audience. I know that AI and machine learning are always two big topics that people want to discuss. So what I'll do is I'll turn it over to you guys, and I'll monitor the chats for any questions for you.
Awesome, I appreciate it. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for joining. And I'm also joined by Darren Mercer, as mentioned. He's one of my colleagues here at Creatio. I'm a senior account manager, so I work and partner with some of the largest companies we have here at Creatio. And Darren is one of our sales executives who works and partners with customers who are exploring low-code technology, being able to share information and be able to advise and potentially bring people on board to work with us here at Creatio. So as far as the topics for today, as Eric mentioned, I think this is a very important, very interesting session. It is about how low-code AI and machine learning are affecting the manufacturing industry, but it affects all of us, right? This isn't just you working in that industry having challenges, but pretty much every human on planet Earth has had some sort of involvement and impact they felt because of the worldwide pandemic and its impact on the manufacturing industry. All right, let's jump into it. Let's talk about the challenges that COVID posed. First is going to be the impacts. So this is all information that was found by industry experts. And first and foremost, it was 7.5% drop in this industry in manufacturing just in the year 2020 alone. And it's not expected to recover and reach the levels it was at in 2019 until the year 2022. So it was quite a heavy impact it had. It's one that's going to be lasting. It equates to $2.8 trillion of value. And then some of the industries that were hit hardest within manufacturing, the global machinery production is actually an 11% reduction during this time. Automotive production will be one of the hardest hit. Unlikely to recover until 2024 is what they found. My wife is trying to change this. She has her eye on a new Tesla, so she wants to be part of stimulating the economy a little bit. So we'll see if we can help there. And also the aerospace, obviously very, very largely hit by the pandemic. And there was a 21% reduction, a collapse in demand for air travel during this time. So those are the impacts that were felt because of COVID-19. Now, the reactions to it. What did businesses do when they went through this situation? You'll see these are the focuses that happened amongst CIOs, according to Gartner, based on the experience. Whopping 93%, there's the resilience on the supply chain. That's obviously crucial here. Don't make me bring up toilet paper because I will totally talk about how supply chain and toilet paper kind of mixes in there a little bit. And then also the plan to invest in talent to be able to digitize their businesses. And they also took this opportunity, 70% of them, to become more familiar with the processes that were inside of the business. So as a CIO, they could better advise solutions, understand things, and be able to drive decisions and inform moving forward. So those are reactions. Now let's talk about what those concerns are that came through these understandings. And we'll start at the bottom on this one. First and foremost, of course, is the financial impact that you're going to have from this situation. Those are results of liquidity and capital resources, but what type of, again, financial impact this is going to have on the businesses. Well over 70% listed that as a major concern, as well as the potential for global recession that could be caused by this pandemic. So there's not just current situation, but what is this going to cause? What is it going to look like going into the next few years, based on how this impacts the global economy? Effects on workforce, reduction in productivity. That's about 40% of the folks that stated that was a major concern to them, as well as we mentioned, supply chain disruptions, difficulties in fundings, and a good percentage of people as well found that they don't have enough information to make these decisions for today. And again, understanding going forward, what type of data, what type of insight they need in order to address these items. All right, awesome. So jumping forward, tech challenges that are being faced right now. Now, some of these items had previously existed and people are just now realizing it. They didn't understand that those weaknesses existed prior to COVID, but now they're seeing them kind of amplified because of the effects of those things. And then you also have challenges that arose because of the actual pandemic that are being dealt with from today going forward. And some of these include siloed data. That's kind of been a theme through the history of technology is, there can be a lot of different point solutions. There can be information housed in a lot of different locations, and it's hard to drive decisions if you don't have a unified data source. So that's definitely a challenge people have. Some others include keeping up with security, keeping consistent, intelligent insights. Very important is scaling that technology to face the growth, especially moving forward as the world kind of bounces back and continues. There's going to be very fast scaling in the technology that's going to need to take place. Also, secure work environment, continuity and disaster recovery was a big focus, and maximizing automation in those robotics, right? It's when these challenges come up, when there's impact on people, employees, you need to have as much automation in place where your business can keep running despite some of the challenges that are happening. So those are the major challenges that were found and pointed out. And moving along, we're going to talk about those trends, right? Sometimes from bad situations, it drives the world forward. It drives technology. It creates opportunity to move things forward and invest in things and really be able to create. And so what we found here was that even though 60% of the manufacturers experienced major disruptions because of COVID, it absolutely accelerated the market to become more industrial and more resilient as well, where if something like this happens again in the future, they're more prepared to be able to deal with it and have less of an impact because of a situation like this. And then as well, the priorities, right? What is it that from what the pandemic caused, were we able to recognize and say, these are going to be our priorities moving forward based on the decisions that we need to make? And again, not surprising, supply chain integration was a big one. Operational resilience at 81%, again, making sure that you have that backup, you have those things in place to be able to continue operating. And improving the operational efficiency was a big one at 92%. That is going to be a major priority and focus for CIOs and other folks in that industry. And then, of course, you have customer growth. We want to get more customers on board. We want to continue driving business, but it was also understood the priority of customer retention. In these types of situations, you need to keep the business you have. You need to make sure you're retaining revenue within your organization. And so it's very important that you focus on your current customers in addition to seeking additional and new business. So those are what we found were the top priority. Cool. So let's talk about actual investment and how people are going to dedicate resources, dedicate funding into improving their technologies. And so the chart you're looking at right here, it's the top line is they're going to invest more. The deep red is they're going to invest the same. And then the darker color there is they're going to invest less in these technologies. So blockchain, Internet of Things, there was a small desire to grow there. It actually had a reduction in interest to invest in. Data storage, again, also a little bit of growth. Artificial intelligence saw a lot of focus that businesses wanted to implement and invest more into AI technologies. Advanced analytics technologies, a big jump there at 19%. What we at Creatio like to see is there was a very big focus and desire to increase cloud-based technologies within businesses. In fact, a very slight number of people said they were going to reduce that, but 20% of folks said we need to invest more in cloud-based technologies. And then robotic process automation, workflow automation kind of circles back and brings it all home about how companies need to become more efficient. They need to become automated so they can better deal with any types of future occurrences like this moving forward. So now that brings us to the trends. What does this cause? What are people focusing on in this industry and where are we going with it? Selling direct to customers. This was obviously a major focus. It was a challenge that happened because of the pandemic, was how they get this product out, the hands that it passes through. So there's going to be a big move into direct to consumer models in order to be able to adapt to these things. Omnichannel is a differentiating reality, is what they have here. It was realized that companies can really increase their pipeline significantly, as much by 1.5 to 2 times by utilizing omnichannel lead generation. So again, making sure you're as efficient as possible and making the most out of what you have, as well as increasing automation. Digital sales operations, it's a big focus. It was found that it can reduce sales costs by up to 25%, and also using data better. Being able to take the information you already have and apply that to decisions that you make going forward. And it's found you can potentially raise conversion rates by 20 to 30% by simply using the data more intelligently that you have. All right, perfect. And on this one, before I pass it off to Darren to talk about some of those specific technologies, if you're going to take a screenshot of anything during this presentation, this would probably be the one, because it's really what kind of summarizes those priorities for action, and where the focus is going to go inside the industry. So those are the direct-to-consumer models, full power to business for inside sales, the driving data, driving lead management, analytics-based sales growth, as well as the full back-end automation, marketing optimization, and digitizing the workforce. So again, that's your snapshot right there if you're going to grab something from this. But from here, I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to my colleague, Darren. So Darren, let me get you to the right slide, my friend, and then I will let you jump in.
Well, thank you, Eric and Eric, for the introduction and talking about the challenges that many manufacturers experienced in the COVID era. And today, luckily enough, I actually didn't copy Eric's haircut for today's presentation. It's just the way things worked out. But I have been fortunate enough through my career to be able to walk through many manufacturing plants of processing chicken and poultry parts in one of the largest brands here in America, high-tech avionics manufacturing locations. So as I've been able to walk the floors and hear the stories from a lot of manufacturers, these 3 technologies that we'll address right now really have become more pertinent and been accelerated, as Eric properly illustrated. So, let's roll on to the next one, Eric, and talk about some of, ultimately what the challenges of 2020 have really driven within a lot of organizations is a required adaptability and plasticity to current market challenges. So if you think about, the supply chain challenges that a lot of organizations have to deal, getting raw materials into their plants, actually, and thinking about how to process and manufacture those correctly, and then having your sales teams where they weren't able to go out and visit with a lot of organizations in person or go out to events and meet a lot of customers. A lot of that process and a lot of those challenges a lot of those changes have really driven organizations to adapt. And, the reliance on adapting internal processes has made organizations focus on real business processes and real drive to make sure that they can keep in contact with their customers. So you'll see organizations are spending a good bit more on digital transformation efforts. Let's automate, because any manufacturing building you've walked into, and these can be the most robust, technically advanced organizations, many times there's still a lot of processes that they do manually, and being able to automate those and clean that up. The challenges of 2020 drove a lot of organizations to do so, from largest manufacturers even down to smaller organizations that we work with. Also, go ahead, Eric. Let's move to the next one.
Yep.
All right, thanks. So as we talk about, what this efficiency and agility and productivity from a lot of organizations have done, what the COVID-19 pandemic did was really condense and drive a lot of organizations to adapt in a much quicker manner. If you think about many organizations drove people to work remotely in the last year because we couldn't work. But the manufacturing organizations still had to have people show up. But COVID-19 really sped up a lot of the transformations of how do we interact with our customers? How do we interact with new prospects? And so a lot of organizations had to drive different mannerisms and different ways to connect with different organizations out there. So, you can see over there, 70% of businesses increase their digital transformation spend during that process so that they could effectively enable customer retention efforts, but also reach new customers doing that process. And also, there's also been a shift overall in leadership as far as business executives coming out here and responding to this digital operational excellence. And we've seen a slow shift from IT organizations carrying the lead on many of these business initiatives, where the business executives get involved more in the process of the technology selection, but also how to deploy this. Let's make sure we map out our processes correctly. And many of these organizations find they need to drive not only speed, time to value, time to market in this process, but also increase productivity. And by doing so, they can get a competitive advantage against their peers. And, ultimately, why do we change our processes? Why do we need to adapt that? Well, there needs to be a couple of real benefits out of the process. And business leaders are looking for that type of competitive advantage in today's marketplace. So, and ultimately, we always like to highlight if there are, some challenges and why we do need to automate those business processes. There usually needs to be a good benefit as far as increasing revenues. The office of the CFO has become much more involved in making sure that organizations are spending properly as budgets were tightened during the COVID-19 pandemic. So you'll see a lot of business, what does this process, how do we automate this, and what is this going to save us, or what is this going to increase our revenue process? And there have been some winners and losers during this pandemic timeframe. Ultimately, the people who have taken advantage of digital automation, digital processes, and digital transformation efforts have really driven and have higher not only net incomes in the process, but they've increased their revenue. You can see by 11.2% of the organizations who really engaged and took these engagements on as far as a digital transformation effort. So therefore, definite dollars and cents involvement in this process has really driven a lot of these changes. So let's transition over and start talking about 3 technologies here that help and assist this digital transformation process within your organizations. And it'll be fun to see everybody's feedback in the chat as far as what you consider pertinent, because we will do a poll at the end in this process. But I also want to talk here a little bit about how low code enables a lot of this digital transformation. So ultimately, low code and business process management. If you think about, as you've walked into one of these large manufacturing organizations, and the teams that are involved are doing their production process, but there's always some gaps in manual processes that slow down and become bottlenecks during that manufacturing process. Allowing a low-code business process engine and automation can really drive a lot of efficiencies through the process and getting the products out to the market quicker. Another real benefit that we've seen that a lot of organizations have been deploying is there's increased adaptability needed. Customers are coming back and saying, what, I need this, but I need this at this point. They understand that there's some supply chain restrictions and some constraints that are happening currently, but by providing better customer service and by adapting quicker to what market changes are doing, that allows a lot of organizations to benefit from increased operational efficiencies. And another aspect is, because sometimes budgets were constrained during this time, we needed worker productivity to increase in that process. And by increasing worker productivity, you need to give them the tools so that they can operate at a more optimum manner. So therefore, really low code can help out and assist that process. The big one that we've heard a good bit, though, is the supply chain has been constrained. If you think nowadays, automotive manufacturers are dealing with not having enough chips to be able to produce all the electronics within their car, and streamlining. Consumers are understanding that there are constraints out there in the supply chain, but we need to give them the proper information at the right time. So having that visibility from origin of raw materials coming into the walls of our manufacturing facility, and then being able to predict and forecast appropriately when we'll be able to deliver those components that are so important that we're trying to provide to our clientele, that has become very paramount in this process. And then also organizations, there's IT skills that are involved in coding and development, but if we deploy low-code technologies that really can enable business users to be able to build their own business processes and adapt their teams in a quicker manner. So therefore, any business application they build and deploy can be done in a matter of days. It doesn't take weeks or months. So really speed their value. Also, artificial intelligence is a fun topic to talk about nowadays. We're not talking Skynet where it controls everything, but let's talk about how this can assist your organization in the process. One area we hear artificial intelligence really helping organizations is on the production lines. Of course, we're out there producing, but as I was telling you about that large chicken and poultry processing plant that they walked through, they estimated any time that their production line would go down, it would cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars per hour when their production line is down. So unexpected and production line breakdowns are really costly to the organization. Artificial intelligence now with internal sensors and the ability to monitor and manage and look at the machinery involved in the production line process really can be enabled by artificial intelligence to say, oh, sensor here, this machine part in the production line is actually utilizing too much energy right now, and the temperatures are exceeding too high. So therefore, we can identify that part as coming down to its end of life. So let's come in and quickly replace that before we have an unexpected production line breakdown. Or, let's look at predictive maintenance schedules. So therefore, we can schedule out when this part likely will expire. So let's make sure that we can be ahead of the game and understand that, make sure that we don't have any unexpected downtimes. Also, artificial intelligence really has been able to help organizations predict better when they can deliver their products to their customers and make sure that that process is moving correctly, because the consumers are understanding, but at the same time they need those products, and giving better insight and giving better forecast availability and telling them when it's going to show up has increased customer attention and trust. And therefore, there's been substantial artificial intelligence plays where it can predict more accurately when the items will show up. And then, of course, we can talk about planning across different departments and being able to forecast via AI technologies of how these interactions will happen and making sure that everybody is in sync. So it really can enable a lot of help. And then the fifth component there is assisting with those manual tasks that we spoke to previously, the bottlenecks that don't happen. If we can automate some of those repetitive tasks, and where we've seen this really helpful is within marketing organizations. Many of them have started deploying automated chat features so that when the customer comes onto the website or interacts with the team, they can automate and answer a lot of their questions quickly and qualify those leads as potential buyers in a quicker manner. So artificial intelligence is fun there. Let's talk a little bit about machine learning. And I imagine we're going to have a question later on that will say, hey, Darren, what's the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning? And we'll be happy to identify that here in a good bit. But machine learning really has helped organizations come in and understand their customer base better. What does this customer buy from us? When do they buy it, and why do they buy it? Now, if this customer is doing that, they have peers out there. Let's see how we can not only assist our customers, but let's look and see in the marketplace who are other organizations who have similar needs, and how can we market and talk to those people. So really, machine learning based upon information and data within our systems can allow us to not only help and assist our existing customers to provide them insights as to how we can help sell to them better, but also how can we sell to other organizations that are similar to this and make sure that we continue to sell to them. Also, the supply chain management, we talked a good bit about visibility and traceability in that process. So we can really model based upon data that we have in our system and forecast properly to make sure we deliver that, and improving the logistics that we do with any organization. So the machine learning and artificial intelligence, low code, all three of those technologies are very important for organizations to adapt.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thanks, Eric.
All right. Bye, guys. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right. So perfect. Our discussion today, gents, is about questions surrounding digital transformation in the manufacturing industry, and I really can't think of a finer panel than what we have here. I've worked with each of you, and manufacturing is a definite strong point for you guys. So I think we've aligned a tremendous group. So question and answer session. I'll ask, you answer. Simple as that. And maybe just to kind of kick off the discussion, why don't we start with the challenges? What do you think the biggest challenges are for digital transformation within the manufacturing industry? And maybe I'll go top to bottom here. I'll direct that one at Jason first.
I think a lot of times manufacturers don't think of the back end, right? They're very much focused on the operational piece of being able to put their product or service out to the market, right? So they're very much focused on their day-to-day job. So when it comes to this digital innovation, right, thinking about how they can streamline their operations, whether it's customer engagement, digital marketing, if they're in the B2B space, in the sales arena, how they can use some of the newer technologies to really drive valuable insights into how their products or services are being used, how they're being distributed, changes in customer demand. I think that's really the big thing that I've seen with our customers is getting them to shift that mindset from their day-to-day operations of delivering the product and service and looking for other ways to transform their business and help them grow.
Ashok, what are your thoughts on, the challenges that manufacturers are having today?
First of all, Eric, thank you for inviting us. I lose track of how many times you and I team up on these events.
It's true. It's true.
It's amazing. Manufacturing industry, as we know, has been evolving slowly, but now they're catching up rapidly. They really need to move fast compared to financial services and healthcare. We've seen a massive transformation just in the last 12 months. Manufacturing, there's a whole operational efficiency that digitalization could drive, but you also have the application side, the customer experience side, whether it's internal or in customer. So how do you shorten the manufacturing timeline? How do you bring the industrial IoT to increase quality of the production, which results in higher efficiency? I also saw some of the apparel manufacturers like Calvin Klein's of the world trying to reduce the manufacturing timeline to be almost instantaneous. So, you go online, you customize your garment, you click a button and you get it within 3 days. So how do you do that? So I think digitalization is a must. It's not an option for them. They can leverage a lot of capabilities to accelerate. And this is where I think low-code solution comes into the place. You don't take 6 months, 12 months to design a solution. You do it in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I think there's a lot of opportunities. I see a great potential for them on all the challenges they're seeing.
Wonderful. Basil, what are your thoughts?
In addition to the comments from my colleagues here, I would say there's 3 other areas that I would put somewhat of an emphasis on, and it's customer sophistication. Customers don't know what they don't know, so they don't know necessarily 100% proactively or reactively what exactly they need to put in until someone gives them the information that there's a disparity or a gap in what they're doing. So that's the first thing that I like to focus on. The other one is infrastructure and processes. How rigid is their infrastructure? How willing is the infrastructure willing to change to make progress towards all the things like Ashok was mentioning a little bit ago, lead times, shortening the manufacturing cycle, things of that nature. And then the last one that comes to mind is just employees in general, pushback and adoption. People don't like change, and people don't like their cheese being moved. So how can you tailor your culture, or how can you adapt some of your processes and pressure points within your organization to make sure that this change that you're going to be pushing them through is going to be easily adapted and a little bit easier to kind of accommodate into what they're doing today?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Basil. In we look at that transformational effort, and you really have to have that culture ingrained, right? And it has to be driven from both sides. That's the common theme that we've heard, throughout the marathon, right? Where does that strategy begin? Is it a top-down strategy? Is it a bottom-up strategy? I think that it's a combination of everything. We have to make that a culture, right? It's not just things being pushed down or driven by the wants and needs of the frontline workers, but it's really that collaboration that's going to make a transformation a success. So excellent. So we'll shift gears from the challenges, and let's start to take a look at trends. And we want to see what trends are emerging in the manufacturing industry right now. And I've kind of pulled up my notes because we had a prior session where our colleagues mentioned, previously, 4 major trends for manufacturing, and kind of just to remind you and the audience, they were selling to direct customers, omni-channel lead generation, increased automation, and data-driven decisions. Do you guys think that these are the most impactful ones, or do you see other trends? And we'll go around robin here, starting from Jason again.
Yeah, I think it's all of those, and a lot of those have some underpinnings that feed into all of them, and especially the data-driven decisions. And as Ashok mentioned, companies really focusing on trying to get more out of Industry 4.0 and the IoT space. As we look at customer behaviors changing, we also have to look at how our technology and our processes change to be able to align with those changing customer expectations. That's where that feeds directly into whether it's omni-channel sales, direct to consumer sales, it's all changing. As we've seen over the last 18, 24 months, everything we thought we knew about manufacturing really changed in a lot of ways. So it's the basics of being able to create a good service and get it to the market, but it's how do we do it? How do we engage with the people that are using those goods and services that has really changed? And having the flexibility that is coming from both Industry 4.0 technologies and low-code platforms, it's enabled customers to be able to make that shift on the fly without taking that massive lead time, as Ashok mentioned before.
Perfect. And Ashok, what are your thoughts on the trends?
Just following on Jason's thoughts, for me, I think it's a direct to customer is leading the behavior. So if you just see the effect of pandemic in the last 12 or so months, there's been a huge shift from going to big restaurants or ordering from eBay or Amazon to really ordering it from the manufacturers, whether it's a food, whether it's clothes, whether it's electronics. And we are seeing big brands, even celebrity-funded brands are now going direct. Even, and I have a lovely lab, and I'm ordering food directly from the pet food manufacturer now, because they customize the pellets based on the age of the dog, and it changes it automatically. So I think this evolving really fast. So the omni-channel, all those things, automations are part of that. That's how they enable the direct to customer. Direct to customer means you have more loyalty for the brand. You control how much you can deliver, what value you can deliver to the customer. But underpinning all of those is the technology trend we are seeing that has already done amazing deliver solutions for healthcare, financial services, and so on. But manufacturing, it's huge. It's a large scale operation. It's not that easy. You can't just change within 6 months. I think change management, as Basil said, is a crucial one. If you don't get that right, a lot of the CIO I speak to across various industries, of course, cybersecurity, all those things are important, but change is the biggest concern because they just can't control it. And that's the biggest challenge. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, Yep.
Mhm.
Basil, I just before you chime in, we're getting a lot of comments on your background in the chat. Everybody loves it, so just wanted to let you know.
Thank you very much. Just for everyone in the audience, this is not a testament to my artistic capabilities whatsoever. It really only speaks to my ability to see well-curated ads and impulse buy.
There you go. There you go. Perfect. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on the trends that both Jason and Ashok have mentioned? Do you have additional thoughts, or?
I definitely think that they've covered the general basis. What I would add to the conversation, in addition to what they've already kind of brought up in their own rights and what they're seeing in their respective areas, is that there's also a level of enablement from the perspective of the customer enablement and also employee enablement. Change management plays a factor in both of those, because if you change how customers do business with you, that's going to be a change that they have to adapt to. And if you disrupt something that's successful, you want to make sure that you disrupt it in a positive way, not necessarily just changing it for the fact of changing it. So I think enablement is another thing to take into consideration. And going back to the element of culture, all these trends that we're talking about, how each company necessarily approaches each of these individual trends or topics will vary from organization to organization. It's not so cookie cutter as people like to assume.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Great points as well, right? And one other thing, just around trends and kind of technology. Another question that is part of our discussion today is cloud manufacturing software a big part of the manufacturing industry transformation already, or is this just kind of an emerging trend that we're seeing today?
I would comment that it's been an emerging trend for a while and gradually picking up steam. When COVID hit, I think it exacerbated the need for people to put these tools into place. They kind of resisted the change because it was such a drastic shift from having everything, in a place where they can reach out and touch their data on a regular basis. They could pet their servers, tuck it in at night, and read a bedtime story, so on and so forth. But with cloud technology, it's a major disruption on that level of ownership and that level of care that they feel that comes along with on-premises software. But cloud technology is by far becoming a very leading requirement almost for organizations to truly have that access from anywhere and on demand at all times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think and I hate always bringing this up, because hopefully we're moving away from this period in our lives. But man, the pandemic really accelerated that that process, right? Digital cloud technologies probably were on the roadmap somewhere, but they had to make that shift very, very quickly. What may have been a 3 to 5 year roadmap has turned into, we got to make that happen right now. Ashok, what are your thoughts?
For me, the term that I think is adaptability. So if you do not have cloud solution, how would you adapt to environment changing right under your feet, right? So if I have the traditional SAP apps or some massive ERP on-prem type of solutions, and here comes the industry change, suddenly I got to shift my gears and do massive changes. Organization needs to change, people need to change, and I don't have 24 months to do it. So the good thing about cloud is it's an on-demand solution. You can tweak it, you can increase the capacity, decrease the capacity without having to worry about data centers and all the complex problems I'm sure all of us have dealt with in our life. So I almost change the question saying, if you're not in the cloud software, how are you going to survive? It's a paradigm shift question for the CIOs and the CEOs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, and agility, to your point, Ashok, agility is crucial now. Yeah. The more agile the company, the quicker they're able to adapt to change and kind of fit in right with that trend, the more successful that company ends up being, just by nature of adapting to those agile platforms.
I think the other thing to think about too, when we talk about manufacturing software, I think there are certain things that also lead naturally to being in the cloud. There are other things that don't, right? MES systems obviously are going to be very, very close to the lines as you think about manufacturing. But things like planning other processes in and around, whether that's order intake, order to cash processes, those things that still are part of the manufacturing environment. Those things lend very naturally to the cloud. So I think it's something to say manufacturing systems moving to the cloud. Some yes, some no. As solutions become more and more edge centric, right? So call it a fog layer, very close in the cloud, but very close and connected to these MES systems, whether it's through natural SCADA connections or other like Rockwell or Siemens, right? They're starting to expose more and more APIs so edge solutions can connect with them. So as those manufacturers allow their systems to have more connectivity, and that's part of the Industry 4.0 transformation. But as they allow that connectivity to expand, so can the movement of these cloud platforms expand within the manufacturing space. So certain things lend naturally to it, some things don't, I guess would be the thing that I'd want to add there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that when we're looking at low code for the manufacturing industry, we tend to think about how that's going to help them streamline their processes, become more efficient. But one of the questions that is always posed is can low code help manufacturers grow? I have a thought on this because when you streamline processes, obviously you're going to be able to do things more efficiently, therefore helping you to grow. But where do you think the focus is for low code? Do you think it's streamlining those processes in based on efficiency, or do you think that that's actually going to help an organization grow? That's something that our audience wants to know.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things, and this is whenever I take Creatio to the market to customers, and whether it's B2B or B2C, I've got a great slide that clearly talks about key areas that you can automate. And this is kind of the BPM side of it, right? So whether it's in the corporate services, the HR, the internal support, employee onboarding, right? That can help. Or if you're in the customer service realm or the order to cash, procurement, all of these are areas where you can use low code platforms to help automate these processes. And that's why something like Studio is it just empowers things faster than any other thing that I've ever used. And we do a lot of different other technologies too, but it's just one of those things, because it has the unified platform for the CRM as well as the BPM. It's just amazing how fast I can go into a customer and start implementing things and just quickly hit these low hanging fruit. And it's just like boom, 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 boom. You're starting to check things off of the I need list very quickly, and it just immediately starts showing value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ashok, Basil, what do you think as well? What are your opinions?
I think as Jason said, in the manufacturing process, there are a lot of workflows involved, a lot of coordination involved between various manufacturing systems. There's touch points, internal customers, but also a lot of third-party suppliers in distributing the products, etc. So what we traditionally take many months to build these solutions on .NET or Java framework, whether it's cloud on-prem, they take time because you got to design the requirement, you got to build the prototype, you go through the application development process. It's mostly IT-led, internal IT-led, even if you bring third-party suppliers, and then you bring the business to validate, etc. It's a long life cycle. What we are seeing with Creatio Low Code is you go to the business and tell them, here is what we could automate your workflow, as simple as a claims management or a order from your distributors in various countries. And we are able to design the application within 3 to 5 days. Sometimes we use a discovery demo technique where we demo, find the requirements, we demo, and so on. On the 5th day, we got the requirements mapped up in the application. And it's the business who's seeing it, and they're happy to proceed. And within 2 to 3 weeks, application is up and running. The suppliers come in, they start to use it. So it's a speed agility, but also it's the stakeholders who are involved in designing it. It's not the traditional, I go to IT, give the specification and come back. I think that is a real power. That's what Catherine keeps saying, right? It's a speed, it's the minutes, the hours, and the days. In terms of manufacturing processes, anything that requires handoff, workflow, exchanging information, providing data analytics, visualizing the data to drive behavioral changes, I think low code is a good fit for that.
Absolutely. And to your point, Ashok, whenever you've got key stakeholders involved in the building of the processes, when it's coming to digital transformation around those processes within the manufacturing process, you've got more adoption. And when you've got more key stakeholders involved from people that are actually going to be the ones that execute the tasks or the processes, you have a very good idea of what's going to work well versus what's not. So you're able to kind of mold the way that you're approaching this low code technology and its application to the processes. Does the people within your organization, or do the people within your organization require something as simple as a button that they click to move it from one step of the manufacturing process to the next? That's where low code can really do a lot of the heavy lifting, because if it's a standardized move from one step in the process to the next, one button click and we've already progressed it, executed several automated actions within the process, and you've got a larger uptick in adoption rate because people are seeing just how useful the low code element is. And also from an ownership perspective, they've had contribution to what it looks like, what it's shaped, what it's formed to within the organization. So they've got much more reason to adopt it rather than resist it.
I think one other thing I want to bring up, Eric, and this is a real life example. We've got a lot of manufacturing folks on here today, but we also we found a use case at one of our clients where they had kind of a central quality and issue management. So think of incident and case management. Low code allowed us to deploy a quality and issue management system linked up with the WMS for centralized, call it disposition, right? So warehouse one or manufacturing center one finds a quality problem with a part. They can immediately, through easily integrating with the WMS, look at inventory, understand the impact or potential impact of having that quality issue, and immediately dispatch people to do surveys, take photos, all of that real quickly. We were able to roll this out in a matter of weeks, where it took us almost 6 months to build it in another technology. That was something that when we took it to the client and said, look, we can do this in about 6 weeks, we completely transformed the way they looked at how to manage their quality and issue processes in their manufacturing room.
Yeah, a great example, and yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. So we're looking at it as a growth factor for organizations. You know, we work with a very large manufacturer, $4 billion manufacturer that has a quite intense quoting process, right? That it's very time consuming, from materials to design to supply chain, just to get the quote out to customers, and it was a very manual process. Well, by implementing low code, design throughout their organization, they were able to lower the time it took to quote by 30%. So when we're talking about growth, if you can get 30% more quotes out, that's going to have an effect on your bottom line. So I think we're all in agreement. Yeah, low code can help grow. Manufacturers grow. I'm going to again shift gears a bit and talk a little bit about big data analysis, right, and predictive maintenance in manufacturing. What do you think about the increasing attention around these two subjects? At this point, I'm just going to let you guys jump in anywhere. Whoever gets to the table, it's like a jump ball. I throw it in the air. Whoever swats it down gets it.
I'll throw the big one out there, which is, I think if companies aren't thinking about predictive maintenance by now, they've already missed the ball. Because anytime, and anybody who's worked in manufacturing knows, anytime your line goes down, you are losing money. So anything you can do to prevent that line from going down, whether it's through predictive maintenance, whether it's through foreseeable changes that you need to make so you can shift lines around, any of those things it means more product going through your line and more product ultimately getting out to customers. So I'll kind of stop there. But Basil and Ashok, and you guys know just as well as anybody, customers cannot stand to have their lines go down. I used to work on the manufacturing side, and every time it went down for any reason, whether it was product shortage, maintenance, whatever, you had the ops manager out there banging at your door going, get this line back up.
I read an interesting case study a month ago. One of the large manufacturers had a problem. Every time the needle breaks in their sewing process, the factory has to shut down for an hour because when it falls, it shatters. So they got to clean all the parts before they can restart. So they added a sensor which can proactively tell when it's going to break. So all it took was 1 minute to replace it. So just brought it from 1 hour to 1 minute. Yeah, I agree. But I think predictive maintenance, yes, I totally agree that the companies really must do it. But the big data analytics also equally very important because it highlights where there are process issues, where there are bottlenecks, and use the data to drive more growth or efficiency. And we see this quite a lot in other sectors, as I mentioned, because we cut across multiple industries. So we are seeing financial services really far ahead on the big data analytics. Healthcare is coming close. They've been working on it. I think manufacturing industry, some companies do it really great, but in my experience, 60 to 70% are still trying to get their arms around. It could be the first polls showed, right, 38% of the audience are saying lack of knowledge staff is the key issue. That could be a contributor. The data-led business, we know they do a lot better than others. So I totally agree.
Mm-hmm. And to carry on that as well, I mean, when you're talking about predictive maintenance and big data just in general, predictive maintenance can make or break whether or not someone's throwing a gasket, and it also extends beyond the actual machines that keep the lines going too. I mean, you can install predictive and then replace maintenance with just being predictive in general. Systems exist to give information, and as long as you understand your business and what elements affect the uptime of your lines, that really is what you need to have visibility of. So that goes all the way back to supply chain even, and being predictive around that. ERPs and MRPs can give you that insight, but realistically, if you have another system that can be a little bit more predictive in just minimum stock levels, for example, that really does allow the prevention of this, because you can forecast demand in one system and see how it's going to flow and impact your production lines as well. And big data, it's kind of humorous to see people about how they interact with big data, because they look at it and like, yeah, all this stuff. What do I do with it? and then big data is really great, but you have to know what you're going to do with it, because if it's just there for the sake of being there, I mean, you might as well just have a nice large digital paperweight sitting there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that I would agree with that. The biggest challenge is, it's not the data. It's not a data challenge. It's how do you make that actionable, right? And that's where I think people, kind of get lost. So, perfect. So I think we're coming up on time. So let me take just a kind of a couple of questions here from the audience, and we can wrap up our session here, guys. So the first question I have is, what defines whether digital transformation would be successful for the company or not?
Oh man, that is such an ambiguous question. I feel like that really depends on the KPIs, the initiatives of the organization as well. I mean, we had this conversation, I think, in one of the last sessions that we did around digital transformation in general, which is, the success of a digital transformation should be based off of factors defined by the organization. So where are your pain points? What exactly are you trying to undergo digital transformation to achieve? And then how you can kind of back into how you measure that. And if you don't even know the topics that you're trying to solve for digital transformation, that's your first barrier that you have to overcome. What exactly does digital transformation mean? It can't just be this cutesy thing that you hear as a buzzword and you're like, yeah, that's what we're going to do. You need to really embrace a strategy and a planning schedule, steering committee of what exactly that means, and then start building actionable items around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I immediately went back to our last conversation as well, Basil. Focus on the outcome, right? That's gonna determine the success of your transformation effort or not. So, Jason, Ashok, there you go.
I'll keep it short. Just want to add, usually what I've seen is digital transformation is a board agenda because it requires capital and it requires executive sponsorship. So board has to define, yes, we are going to do this over the next 3 to 5 years. Here is the ROI we're expecting. Here is the investment we are going to commit. And here is the executive at the board level who will be responsible for driving it. And then the outcome is measured based on hitting the ROI, right? And it's less to do with technology. It's more to do with business change. So you might want to shift your manufacturing from a highly integrated to decoupled, decentralized, so they can be a lot more agile. So there can be a lot of parameters, but it's usually board has to commit. If your board doesn't commit, it really won't work. That's what I think.
Agreed.
I definitely agree as well. Yeah, that's almost a cultural thing as well. The culture of the company, it has to be enforced from the top down. They're the ones that set the standard and the expectation.
Yep. Great point. Great point. Do we have time for one more? Where are we at? I don't see any red lights flashing yet, so we got time for one more. So let me. Does privacy play a vital role in the reluctance to change at both the human and organizational levels? So again, does privacy, play a vital role in that reluctance, to change?
I think some companies are reluctant, especially in the banking financial sector. They're very concerned about having customer information where they can't control it. I think that the last 5 to 10 years in moving, especially things like CRM systems to the cloud, companies have gotten more used to it or more accustomed to it. You look and Ashok, you work more in the banking financial space than we do, but I know even if you think about claims and policy admin, right, there's just no way insurance companies are going to ever put that stuff on the cloud. They don't want the risk of that sitting out there. That being said, especially in the manufacturing space, I think that companies are a little more less hesitant to be able to move to the cloud. I do think that they struggle with what to move and when to move, but companies have gotten really good. Cloud providers have gotten really good about ensuring that they're SOC compliant and ensuring that they have PCI compliance. So most of those concerns, I think, have been addressed adequately enough over the last 5 to 10 years that companies' hesitancy has come down.
Absolutely. And I would piggyback on top of that, saying that the understanding of what exact privacy standards exist with each individual cloud platform, the lack of knowledge or the lack of foresight to even ask the question, that's definitely something that if you proactively breach that topic with the individual customer, typically they're a lot more put at ease by that concept and making that migration to the cloud. You're eliminating that barrier very quickly.
All I want to say is we are seeing, even in an extremely sensitive industry, even public sector, government, etc., they are moving to the cloud, but in a more constrained cloud. If you don't mind, so there's a boundary around it. There are multiple boundaries before cyber attack could come through. So it's a matter of determining which aspect you can put it on the cloud, which you cannot, and you partition it, because you can have it's a hybrid solution is possible, right? Defining that. But other than that, privacy is common for all industries. You have to protect the data, you've got to have the process. But the good thing about manufacturing industries is highly process driven. So the audience know what process is, how to control it. They probably need more awareness and proven concept and proven framework to implement it, so you don't do trial and error.
Excellent. All right. Well, gentlemen, that brings us to time for our session. What a wonderful discussion. As always, just a phenomenal presence here on our session. As always, you guys never are short to deliver. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully we'll have a few more of these. Ashok, I know you and I will be doing something at some point in the near future. We're a team. We should keep, we should keep track of how many. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.